Hey everybody, it's GoblinoX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. Today I'm going to be playing some Historic Brawl with a pretty classic commander by Arena standards. We're going to be playing with Jhoira, Weatherlight Captain. She's 2 a blue and a red for a 3/3 legendary creature, Human Artificer. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you get to draw a card. So you're drawing a card whenever you cast an artifact, legendary, or saga. So while she is quite a classic commander by Arena standards, she's been out since Brawl and Historic Brawl have been a thing on Arena. She is going to be implementing a lot of the new cards from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, a lot of the new blue and red artifacts. So this kind of deck is going to be a combo deck, a Storm combo deck to be specific. For those who don't know, Storm is a mechanic focused around casting as many spells as possible in one turn. So any deck that's trying to just spam a million spells in one turn, whether or not they're even using a card that technically says Storm on it, is generally referred to as a Storm deck. So here is an example of a Storm card. It's not our primary win condition, but it's a fun card we can use to combo off the Mind's Desire here. The Storm mechanic being when you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before it this turn, and you may choose new targets for the copies. So these are the kind of decks you have to really pay a lot of attention to when playing in paper. I do have a paper Jhoira commander deck. It's very rude, and I don't bring it out very often because most people don't like playing against this kind of deck. But on Arena, where it's just specifically 1v1, it's already less, kind of focused around just hanging out with friends and more focused around who's going to do the craziest things. So on Arena, I feel like it's probably less rude, although it is still definitely a rude deck. So let's go through how the deck works in general and what the individual cards are in the deck to give a brief summary of every inclusion that I've got in here. So the general game plan, as I said before, a Storm combo deck. We're going to be trying to cast as many spells as we can in one turn. The way that we fuel that in a Jhoira deck is by casting a ton of historic spells, primarily artifacts. Every time we cast an artifact, as long as Jhoira's on the board, we get to draw another card. So she's going to make sure that we stay fueled and have plenty more spells to cast. So a really good way to make sure that you can do that, since we're not going to be running out of cards, we could still run out of mana pretty easily. So we're using all of the cost reduction cards that'll make our artifacts cheaper. We have Jhoira's Familiar, making all historic spells cheaper. We have Foundry Inspector, making all our artifact spells cheaper. We have Enthusiastic Mechanaut, making our artifact spells cheaper as well. And I believe we have a couple ways to make our colorless spells cheaper as well. Primarily Ugin the Ineffable, making all colorless spells cost 2 less. And then also the Immortal Sun, making everything cost 1 less. So a bunch of cards like that. The idea is to get 1 or 2 of those out alongside a bunch of mana rocks helping us cast additional spells each turn. And the number 1 easiest win condition is Paradox Engine, making it so if we have any mana rocks on the board, every time we're casting these spells, which are often only somewhere between 0 and 3 mana, we're untapping all of our mana rocks and being able to re-tap them to cast the next spell. So Paradox Engine, an incredibly rude card. Actually pretty surprising that it's not banned in Historic Brawl yet, but as long as it's not banned, I'm gonna keep playing it in the Jhoira deck at the very least. So that's the primary idea for how we're going to be casting a bunch of spells, a bunch of mana rocks, a bunch of ways to untap them or reduce the cost of our artifacts. And how do we win? Because that's just going to be like putting a bunch of cards on the board. That doesn't technically win the game. Well, we've got a couple different ways, one of them being Mind's Desire. That's going to cast just a boatload of cards for free and make sure our board state's absolutely ridiculous. There's Grape Shot if we really storm off. This is probably the hardest win condition. But we also have like Dragon Spark Reactor, which is a really, really fun new win condition from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. This gets a charge counter every time an artifact hits our board, whether or not it was cast. So it works with everything that makes artifact tokens as well, like treasure tokens and stuff like that. So a super, super sweet card. And then you can sacrifice it, deal damage to a creature and a player equal to the number of charge counters. So if we get this to 25 charge counters, just dome our opponent for 25. So that's a really fun win condition. But the classic Jhoira win condition, if you've seen the deck or played the deck before, is Aether Flux Reservoir, a great Storm card because it really stacks on incredibly fast exponentially, and it's an artifact, which means it's tutorable by the cards that we have in our deck that search up artifacts, like Whir of Invention, and Inventor's Fair can also tutor it up. It's also gets its cost reduced by everything that's reducing the cost of our artifacts. It gets copied by our cards that copy artifacts, like our Replication Specialist. So there's just a lot of great things about having our win condition be an artifact card and as well. So Aether Flux Reservoir, probably the #1 strongest win condition. But as I said before, it's amongst a myriad of other similar options. So this one is whenever you cast a spell, gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. So the first spell you cast, you gain 1. Next time you gain 2. The third spell you cast 3. At that point, if you've only cast 3 spells in the turn, you've still gained 6 life total. Once you've cast 4 spells, you've gained 10 life total. It stacks up so quickly, and you only have to make it to 50 life to deal 50 damage to any target, including your opponent's face. So those are the win conditions and the deck idea in general. Let's go through the individual cards. I don't have a great reason for everything in the deck because Historic Brawl is my casual format, which I do still, as you can see, get somewhat competitive with the deck building. But I still just like playing a bunch of kind of cards and strategies that I enjoy, and I just really like artifact stuff and combo stuff. So some of the decisions in here are probably not the #1 ideal decisions. Like I have basically no interaction. If my opponent's doing their own absurd stuff, I'm not going to stop them. They can just go off and kill me. So pretty much everything in the deck is focused on doing our own stuff. And other than that, there's some cards that I just enjoy that are in here. So without further ado, let's take a look at everything in the deck. As always, I will have timestamps so that you can just scrub the time bar below to see when I get into the gameplay. You can skip right ahead to that if you're interested in that, if you already get the gist of it. So without further ado, as I've said for like the 4th time, let's start talking about the individual cards. First and foremost, we have Ornithopter, a very classic card that I've loved since I laid eyes on it. Not a lot of decks where it's actually useful, so the times where I do find it useful, I absolutely love it, just because it's such an adorable card, such a fun card. Just a 0 mana, 0/2 artifact creature with flying. This card is in the deck because anytime we have Jhoira on the board, it's just a free way to draw a card and add to the storm count, so it's really nice for that reason. Combos well with anything that cares about artifacts entering the battlefield, like Dragon Spark Reactor. Helps cast affinity spells. Those are spells that will cost 1 less for each artifact we control, so spells like Thought Monitor here have affinity for artifacts, so Ornithopter will help cast those. Lots of fun little synergies with the Ornithopter in the deck. Next we have Beaumont Courier, another cheap little artifact creature, often gets its cost reduced by our cost reducing cards to make it also free. This one can potentially refill our hand, so a nice early game drop. Reinforced Ronin is an incredibly fun combo with everything that we have that cares about casting artifacts or having artifacts enter the battlefield or anything like that. This is one of the new Neon Dynasty cards. Bounces back to our hand every turn, so it just makes sure we can always be casting at least 1 artifact each turn for all of the different ways that we're wanting to trigger those kind of artifact synergistic spells. The Mox Amber here is an excellent card in Jhoira and really good in any commander deck with like a 3 or less mana commander. The reason it's so good in Jhoira, even though she costs 4 mana, is that, of course, it's a free artifact, so it does everything the Ornithopter does for us and taps for mana, which is absolutely incredible because this deck also loves running mana rocks. We've got ways to untap them, like the Paradox Engine and Voltaic Servant and stuff, so this is incredibly good in this deck. Tormod's Crypt, again, similar to the Ornithopter and Mox Amber, free artifact. This one, just a little bit of graveyard hate in case our opponent is doing something, but usually it's literally just a 0 mana artifact with no text, which is a card that we would run in a Jhoira Weatherlight Captain deck. There is a card called Darksteel Relic, I believe, that's just a 0 mana artifact that just says this card's indestructible, and that's it. If that card were on Arena, I'd put it in this deck, so Tormod's Crypt does not have to trigger very often for it to be a fine card for the deck. Aether Spellbomb, nice little bit of interaction with our opponent while still being a really cheap artifact. Moonsnare Prototype can be a mana rock and also a cheap artifact to cast. The Experimental Synthesizer is a great new card from Neon Dynasty that gives us a temporary card draw when it enters the battlefield, and then temporary card draw again when it dies. We have a few ways to sacrifice artifacts, so not often are we going to be spending the mana to make a Samurai. This will just be the first artifact that we see on our board that we're like, okay, if I have something that needs to sack artifacts, I'm sacrificing the adorable little egg first and foremost. Manifold Key is exceptional with anything that taps for 2 or more mana, and we do have some mana rocks that do that. We're not using the 3 mana ability very often, but just for the ability to untap artifacts, it is quite good. Even if we're not untapping things that make mana, we can untap some things that have like a tap ability that only occurs once per turn, like I know we have at least one card that combos in that way. Most of what we have are mana rocks, but there's one. Oh, here it is. There's like Brea's Apprentice. We can redo the tap ability multiple times, or yeah, anything else like that. On to 2 mana, we have Corridor Monitor, a nice cheap artifact creature that has the ability to untap an artifact when we play it. So again, good with the mana rocks we have that tap for 2 or 3 mana, because then if we're getting a cost reduction on Corridor Monitor, this puts us up in mana when we cast it. If we have a cost reducer, it only costs a single blue, and then we could cast it off something like the Firemind Vessel that adds 2 mana. So we're adding 2 mana to play a 1 mana spell that then untaps our 2 mana rock, so really nice with those cards. Renowned Weaponsmith is a great way to cheat artifacts into play early by tapping for 2 mana for artifact spells. This can let us play a Gilded Lotus or Paradox Engine turn 3, and it's really hard to lose a game where you have either of those on the board turn 3 if your opponent can't immediately blow them up. The Reality Chip is an incredible card draw engine. You attach this to a creature, so it does require a little bit of setup before it starts going, but once it's attached to a creature, you can just play lands and spells from the top of your library. You don't get to cast, or you don't get to play 2 lands per turn still, so if you get stuck with a land clump on top, you're not going to cast a lot of spells, but otherwise, if you have a couple spells in a row, you can cast them, and then your land for turn, get the land out of the way off the top, and then maybe there's another clump of spells there. This can really dig through your deck incredibly fast, and it's a really cool new card from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Goblin Engineer is a card I haven't played with yet, but was added to Arena since the last time I built a Jhoira deck, and it looks like a really, really fun card. This lets us search our library for any artifact, put it into our grave, and then sacrifice an artifact to return one that costs 3 or less from the grave to battlefield. So basically search for any artifact that costs 3 or less that we want, and then sacrifice something to bring it back. So a lot of great mana rocks to pick up, a lot of cost reducers as well, which is probably what this is going to tutor for the most often. Can grab a card like the Enthusiastic Mechanaut or the Foundry Inspector to help our stuff start getting cost reductions. Tawashi Songshaper, this card's another one that's just going to be like a 1 mana artifact a lot of the time because of cost reducers, and this can pressure our opponent for a lot of damage if we're not being able to fully combo off. At least we get to attack in with this as like a 5-7 power creature quite often. Enthusiastic Mechanaut's a cost reducer. Automated Artificer's another mana rock. Ornithopter's a mana rock. Voltaic Servant untaps the mana rocks. Dragon Spark Reactor, one of the cool new win conditions for the deck that I've been over. Grape Shot, the fiddliest win condition that we have, but we have, as you've seen in our 1 and 2 drops, we have some random dorky creatures that have power, so it's possible we've attacked our opponent for a bit to where we can finish the game off with a Grape Shot for like 10 or 11 if we start comboing a little bit, so Grape Shot's cool for that. We've got a clump of mana rocks because we want a lot of them in here. We have Ichor Wellspring, another card that's a great artifact to sacrifice to cards like the Goblin Engineer and the Scrap Welder we'll see soon. Mindstone and Prophetic Prism, kind of more in that mana rock or little sacrificial artifact sphere. At 3 mana, we have Emery, which is an exceptional card. She is a legendary creature, so she's historic, so we draw off Jhoira when we cast her. She lets us recast an artifact from our graveyard each turn, which is very powerful. Sai, again, legendary, so we draw off Jhoira when we cast him. This one going to spit out a bunch of Thopter tokens as we're casting artifacts, so we get to kind of storm off in an aggressive manner with Sai, just attacking with a bunch of Thopter creatures to win the game. Vizier can untap our mana rocks. Arcbound Tracker is another one that's kind of an aggressive Stormwind condition. Every time that we're casting a spell other than our first spell, we're putting another counter onto the Arcbound Tracker, so this can be just a giant menace creature to close out the game real quickly, and even if it gets killed, it has Modular, which means you get to move all of its +1/+1 counters onto another artifact creature when it dies, so you still keep all of its power and toughness on the board after it dies. Birji, God of Storytelling, is very similar to a cost reducer like Foundry Inspector or Enthusiastic Mechanaut, because now every time we're casting a spell, period, we're getting 1 mana back. So we're getting a 1 mana rebate instead of an upfront 1 mana cost reduction. So very similar to Foundry Inspector and Mechanaut. If you have her in tandem with those those mana reducers and you're being able to cast those artifact spells for free, then she does put you up in mana, which is really nice. So very interesting card. Depending on how many cost reducers you have, she could be really good, or she could be just kind of medium, just kind of the same as any of the other ones. Breya's Apprentice is a fun way to make sure that we're drawing some cards even if things aren't comboing off well. If our opponent is playing a pretty controlling deck and they keep countering or destroying Jhoira every time we play her, Breya's Apprentice gives us a way to just kind of filter through our mediocre little artifacts that are hitting the board and not quite comboing off. Any token producers we have work really well with it, like Sai and stuff like that. Just make sure that we keep drawing an extra card each turn at least off of that sacrifice ability. Scrap Welder is a really fun new sacrifice ability. You can sacrifice an artifact with mana value X to return an artifact with mana value less than X from your graveyard to the battlefield and give it haste until end of turn. So a really fun way to kind of cycle through your artifacts. This one's not so good with the tokens, obviously, but it's pretty good with the cards like Ichor Wellspring and stuff. We can sack that to get a 1 mana artifact back. And we even have some 0 mana artifacts, so maybe sometimes we sack a 1 mana artifact to get a 0-1. I still haven't played this card yet in my life, but it seems like a really fun card, and I love any of the red artifact synergistic cards because we just haven't gotten them throughout Magic's history. They kind of started doing that when they made the blue-red commander deck, which was only a few years ago now, I think. So not a ton of like blue-red artifact combo stuff, so I'm really excited every time they make more of them. Dalakos, Crafter of Wonders, is very similar to the Round Weaponsmith. It's just going to help us cast some artifacts early. Foundry Inspector is a cost reducer. Midnight Clock is a mana rock. Trash for Treasure is really good if our opponent manages to blow up one of our important artifacts like Aetherflux Reservoir or Paradox Engine. Every game, all the time, we're always going to have just a pile of random artifacts on the board, and this will turn one of them into one of the win conditions that's been blown up. So Trash for Treasure is excellent. Saheeli Rai is really fun. We can just use her to scry for a bit, and she's legendary, so we draw a card when we cast her. But then once we have a really good artifact out, we can just -2 to copy any artifact we control. We only have the copy until the end step, but if we're copying something really good, like again, an Aetherflux Reservoir, Paradox Engine, Dragon Spark Reactor, then it doesn't even really matter that we only get it for a turn because it's still going to go off and do some wild things. Saheeli Sublime Artificer is a way to spit out a bunch of servos, very similar to Sai, except this one, instead of triggering off artifacts, triggers off of non-creatures. So she actually, I think she actually triggers on less cards in her deck than Sai does, but still triggers on enough. As you can see, look at all these non-creatures here. Still triggers enough to be a solid card when we're trying to storm through our deck and cast a lot of spells. She also has that alternate ability, making one of our artifacts a copy of another artifact. That could matter a lot. We can make our 1/1 servo a copy of a Gilded Lotus to get a bunch more mana, or even just a copy of an Arcane Signet for 1 more mana in the turn. Sometimes that'll matter. Another mana rock here, Chromatic Lantern. Whir of Invention is an incredible tutor. We can improvise with it, which means we get to tap our artifacts to help cast it. So it's triple blue and X, grab an artifact with mana value X, just grab whatever we need, grab our win condition, grab our Paradox Engine, anything like that. Filigree Attendant is a way to win the game just by attacking our opponent, if, again, the combos aren't going off. Vidalcan Archmage is like a backup Jhoira. Sometimes you can get Jhoira and the Archmage out, and then you're just living the dream. Twin Shot Sniper is nice because it gives our deck a tiny bit, again, a tiny bit of interaction with our opponent. This one, just a really great rate. This gives us, a 2 mana instant, 2 damage to any target, and we get to have that in our deck while still having a deck just full of nothing but artifact creatures, because this is also an artifact creature. If we get enough cost reductions to play this for 1 or 2 mana. Jhoira's Familiar, another cost reducer. Antiquities War is one of the cards that I'm really not so sure about in the deck, but it's kind of a classic to me because it came out same time as Jhoira, and I've had it in my Jhoira decks in Commander and Brawl ever since. They just kind of, I don't know, they fit together with me. But it is really, really slow. You just draw 1 artifact the turn you play it, then 1 artifact the turn after out of your top 5. So it's probably too slow for the deck. You'll see when we get into the gameplay, this deck just really combos off super quickly if it's not interacted with. So Might be too slow, but still. Storm the Vault is super fun. This is a 4-mana enchantment that flips into a land that taps for a blue for each artifact you control. It flips if you control 5 or more artifacts. That's not that hard to do in this deck. So it's kind of like our one copy of Tolarian Academy, which is an incredibly powerful land that adds just so much mana in this deck. There's the Aetherflux Reservoir, the big win condition. There's the two mana tapping, 4-mana Mana Rocks, the Firemind Vessel, and the Key to the Archive that are great with our untappers or our artifact cloning effects like Replication Specialist. Replication Specialist is super sweet, another one of the new Kamigawa Neon Dynasty cards. Pretty expensive, but for good reason. This card is absolutely monstrous in a deck like this. Whenever a non-token artifact is entering the battlefield under your control, you can make a copy of it for only 2 mana. So if you cast a Paradox Engine, you have 2 Paradox Engines, and it should be completely impossible to lose having 2 Paradox Engines. If you cast a Gilded Lotus, you have 2 Gilded Lotuses. If you cast, the list goes on. Anything insane, you've got 2 of them, and it's just completely bonkers. There's the Gilded Lotus I've been talking up so much because it's so good with the untappers. There's the Paradox Engine that I've been talking up because it's so good with the Mana Rocks. And then at more than 5 mana, we have a bunch of really big stuff. Most of it gets cost reduced, though. Thought Monitor gets cast for really cheap in this deck because of the affinity for artifacts, and it draws 2 cards when we play it, which is excellent. Metalwork Colossus often gets cast for super cheap because we're going to have a lot of non-creature artifacts on the board, reducing its cost. And this can just come out early, attack our opponent for 10 a few times, and try to win the game that way. Mind's Desire, our kind of alternate win condition. Immortal Sun is really fun. It gets reduced by our cheaper cost reducers and then adds to them by also reducing costs. And it buffs our board, and it shuts down Planeswalkers, and we're drawing an extra card each turn. Bonkers card. Ugin is another one of the ridiculous colorless spell reducers. It reduces them by 2. And it's also just an incredibly good Planeswalker that gives us a bit of interaction, destroying colored permanents for -3. The one thing that I will say about the Immortal Sun, if you haven't noticed, we do have like 3 Planeswalkers in the deck, but that's not too many of them. And the Immortal Sun, we only have 1 Planeswalker that doesn't have a good static ability. So the only thing that really gets shut down by the Immortal Sun is the Saheeli Rai. Saheeli Sublime Artificer and Ugin still have a very good static ability, even if they're getting shut down by the Immortal Sun. Next up, we have Reality Heist, which, again, affinity for artifacts means it's always going to get cast for like 2 mana, and it's just probably just the better version of Antiquities War in this deck, because it's just immediately 2 mana instant speed, draw 2 artifacts out of the top 7, instead of doing it once per turn at sorcery speed for 4 mana total. So honestly, if I still had this deck built in the past, it probably would have been a really simple 1-for-1 cut Antiquities War, add Reality Heist, but I didn't. I completely rebuilt the deck from scratch here, so they both ended up in the deck somehow. Don't worry about it. We'll just run them both, have more card draw. Then we have Chromatic Orrery, which is the poor man's, I guess the rich man's Gilded Lotus, because it costs even more mana and it's mythic. But yeah, it does the same thing as Gilded Lotus. Gilded Lotus is tapped for 3 mana of any one color, so it's really good with ways to untap it. Chromatic Orrery, because of its static ability, is tapped for 5 mana of any color, and yeah, it's even better with ways to untap it. So Chromatic Orrery, filling the same role as Gilded Lotus. So everything I said earlier to apply to the Lotus applies to the Orrery as well. So that is the full deck. We also have some utility non-basic lands like any deck would. Castle Vantress and Otawara are just staples for any blue commander deck. So Kenzin, a staple for any red commander deck. We don't have Castle Embrith because I don't think we attack enough for that to really matter, but we could throw that in here as that is basically a red commander deck staple, all the blue-red duels, and then a good amount of just colorless utility lands, most having to do with artifacts. That's just because our mana costs are not super color restrictive, so we do have the versatility of being able to play some lands that tap for colorless if they're good with the artifact theme. And we don't even have too many of them. We have like 3 or 4. We have Treasure Vault, Scavenger Grounds, Inventor's Fair, and Blink Moth Nexus. So yeah, we have 4 lands that only tap for colorless, and all of them except Scavenger Grounds benefit a lot in an artifact deck. So that's the deck. Really long spiel there, so I'm going to catch my breath here as I head into round 1 of the gameplay. Alright, here we are. Pretty great hand. Spire of Industry adding whatever color we need. Moonsnare Prototype ramping us. Goblin Engineer finding a cost reducer. Very flexible hand and super good stuff. We're going to be against Sethron Hurloon General here. This is an aggressive Minotaur tribal commander, spitting out Minotaur tokens every time they play a non-token Minotaur, and giving the whole field of Minotaur +1/+0 Menace and Haste for only 3 mana. So that deck can really pop off super quickly. It is quite scary. So unfortunately we can't play our Moonsnare Prototype turn 1 because our Spire of Industry only taps for colored mana if we control an artifact. So we'll have to wait until later. Corridor Monitor here and taps an artifact or creature. None of these lands are artifact lands, unfortunately. So I'll just go for a Cold Steel Heart here on blue mana, so we have a blue source even if we lose our artifacts. Thrill of Possibility from our opponent, getting some card draw. They discard a Changeling. That gets a +1/+1 counter every time they play a Minotaur. 4 mana here, we'll just try to jump out Jhoira, see if they have removal for her. Hopefully not. We have drawn the Restoration Specialist, which is really fun to play around with, if you have the time and the mana to do so. So Fabled Passage from our opponent grabs a swamp. There's an Experimental Synthesizer, great card to sacrifice to our Goblin Engineer. Also costs only 1 mana, so I'm a little interested in just dropping that down first, because it also draws us a card here. So I'm going to drop that before anything else. Draw our card. It's an Ugin. See what we exile. It's an Aether Spellbomb, so we will probably cast that Aether Spellbomb here. No cost reducers, so we go for colorless. Here's the Aether Spellbomb. We draw a card. There's our land per turn, the Frostboil Snarl, but it comes into play tapped, so we'll save that for later. Let's play our Corridor Monitor and untap our Cold Steel Heart. Then we'll still have the blue mana up to cast the Moonsnare Prototype and draw another card after this. And this is kind of how the deck's going to function. As you can see, as soon as Jhoira hits the board, if we get another turn, we're going to cast a ton of artifacts in that one turn pretty easily. So if we get any of the cards that are triggering as artifacts enter the battlefield, or as we cast artifacts, that's where we really start to go off, and we do have the Dragonspark Reactor in hand now. That being said, they have 4 mana untapped now, so the odds of removal just keeps getting higher and higher. We unfortunately don't have blue mana, so we can't return Jhoira to our hand. We can only sacrifice the Spellbomb just to draw a card here. So don't have a way to save her, which is certainly a bummer, but we can try to go for like a Mind's Desire to draw a bunch of cards after we cast a bunch of spells. I think I'm going to cast Ugin here to get some more cost reduction on our colorless spells. We can start making 2/2s and just go for a regular kind of Ugin value win here. And if Ugin is still around next turn, then we could make some pretty explosive plays, although we only have 1 colorless spell in hand, technically, just the Metalwork Colossus. So there's Sethron. Alright, we do have the mana to cast Jhoira, but all of our spells in hand are pretty expensive here, so we're not really going to go off much, are we? So what do we want to do? Could tutor one up with the Adventurers Fair now. How much cost reduction do we have going on? Just 2. We'll have 2 mana up, so we can grab a 4 mana or less spell and definitely get it, so we can go Aetherflux Reservoir here. Yeah, seems fine. Just another turn of setup here. We do have a free Metalwork Colossus now, which is pretty great. Because it's going to block their creatures unless they can get Sethron back out and give the field menace. Yeah, no, this is still... We still have explosive things going on. It's just not like an immediate Stormwind or anything. Still pretty ridiculous stuff for like turn 5 here. So we're still in a pretty great position. We're going to pass the turn after this, though. No reason to attack a 1-4 into a 2-3 or a 2-2 in. Alright, so Sethron's going to cost them 7 mana now, so it's unlikely they get to bring their commander back. At least not this turn. We're at 29 life, so we only need to gain 21 more to get to full life. And Metalwork Colossus can go right back to our hand pretty easily here. We can sacrifice the Spell Bomb and the Synthesizer, and that's probably what I'll do, because it'll still be quite cheap to cast it. Not quite free anymore, because we'd be sacrificing 2 mana worth of non-creature artifacts, which is big. I guess if I play Dragonspark Reactor, then it'll be free again, because that's 2 mana value worth of artifacts, and that's exactly what we would be sacrificing here. So sacrifice Aether Spell Bomb and the Synthesizer. See what the Synthesizer hits. And now Metalwork Colossus is free. Guardian Idol is free. Okay, yeah, we're popping off. We're popping off. We're at 35 here. Not quite gonna kill them immediately, but we're getting real close to the 50 we need. We'll just toss a cost reducer in there, I guess. Foundry Inspector. Now, oh, I can't Grape Shot because that's just blue mana up right now. Ooh, that's unfortunate. Should not have let Auto Tapper do stuff. Or actually, I probably just cast 2 red spells. I did. I was a doofus with that. It's all good. But one more spell here would have been like 4 or 5 life. Yeah, it would have been 5 life because Storm counts at 4. It would be the 5th one we're casting. So we missed out on being at like 44 life here and being incredibly close to the shoot our opponent for 50 with Aetherflux Reservoir win. So yeah, this is a really complex deck to play as well. There are just a ton of things on the board and stacking together at all times too. So luckily I just play it in a for fun format where it doesn't matter, because if this were a Historic Brawl tournament or something, then I'm sure I've made 50 misplays every turn and will for the rest of this video. Ooh, Vidalcan Archmage is pretty cool. We can't cast too many spells here, but I could go cast 2 spells by going Specialist Jhoira. It's not even that good. Don't have anything to sack to grab an artifact. We can just grab one from Grave. Yeah, Synthesizer from Grave actually seems kind of spicy. I think I'm going to go for that. We'll tap this for a mana while it's still around, but then we'll sacrifice it. I'm actually, rather than doing cost reducers, I'm just going to see if I can draw into stuff that lets us, oh my god, lets us cast more stuff each turn. I guess I'll just grab a... See, I don't think the cost reducer is all that good here because we just don't have more artifacts in hand, but we get to sack the Synthesizer here, which could hit us another cheap spell to play, maybe. It does. Tormod's Crypt. Aetherflux Reservoir is getting really close. We're at 42 now. We have the mana to play this Archmage? That's crazy. Yeah, I guess we can play an Archmage. Again, the sequencing is absolutely abysmal here, but you get the gist of what I'm supposed to be doing. But I'm supposed to be being smarter in the process. You get to these board states where all your non-creature artifacts just become so small too. It's hard to pay close mind to what colors you have in your mana rocks and stuff, and how much mana rocks you have, or how many. Burning Fist Minotaur, Flinthorn Buccaneer. Pretty fun deck from our opponent. Looks like a mixture between Menace Tribal and Minotaur Tribal, focusing around the two abilities of Sethron pretty well. They're going to go for a big attack here to try to make sure that I can't have... I guess I take the rest. They're trying to make sure that I can't be at 50 life this next turn and just shoot them immediately. Alright, I should have blocked with the Bomat Courier, not an island there, because it'd be another free spell. So here's a free spell that draws us a card. Jhoira, I think 6 mana for Jhoira is still a little too much for me to be interested in doing that right now. Oh, Saheeli ends it for sure. Because we just make another Aetherflux Reservoir and the cast just like anything.
Just as handsome.
We just like Grape Shot here. Grape Shot our own 2/2 so we can get that into our hand and cast it for free. Yeah, make up for the fact that I messed up. Shoot that for 2s to put that in a hand and then cast it for free, and then we'll be at like 51 or 52 or something after we cast that. Well, I can check the exact math. Let's see. Grape Shot will be... Grape Shot stormed for 1. So it was the second spell that we cast. Which means we're gaining 4 because we have 2 reservoir down. So we're going to be at 48. And then we'll cast... Yeah, we'll be at 48 and then we'll cast a Bomat Courier and gain 3 life twice, which means we'll gain 6. So 48 plus 6 will be at 54 and then we shoot them for 50. So yeah. Alright. Okay, our opponent is going first here. I'm a pretty big fan of this hand. We've got a Mana Rock to help us accelerate into our Jhoira. When we cast Jhoira, we know we're drawing at least 1 card off of her because of this Ornithopter. We have a Trash for Treasure, which is an excellent way to use the Ornithopter after it's hit the board. So yeah, just really love this hand all around. We have, of course, one of the late game big Mana Rocks too, the Key to the Archive, tapping for 2 mana. We're against Helena and Elena Partners, which can be a really, really aggressive Gruul Monsters deck. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get outraced here and they just beat us down too quickly for us to deal with. Cold Steel Heart on blue as usual. We're also going to have Birji, God of Storytelling, giving us a bunch of extra red, so certainly going to be hurting more on the blue mana front. Nylea Keen-Eyed, so they can play creatures from the top of their library? Nope, just creatures cost 1 less, and for 3 they can draw creatures off the top of their library. Okay. So, fingers crossed, no removal. Generally tends to be my my general line or general game plan when playing Jhoira. You can run Pact of Negation in this deck, but there aren't a lot of great ways on Arena to protect your commander in blue and red that are also cheap. So there's like pretty much just Pact of Negation where you can counter a spell for 0 1 time, but there's no Swiftfoot Boots and there's no Lightning Greaves. Those are 2 really important cards to have with Jhoira in Commander, because you really want to protect her the moment you play her, because she is such a lightning rod for removal in a multiplayer Commander game. So what are we doing here? Play our untapped land. Play our Key to the Archive, I guess. We draw a card off of it. If we play Birji, we only have 2 mana left. Yeah, and then we're not really doing anything, so sure. Draw a card, we just drew a land, so these are not what I'm super looking for. Well, I can Doomblade Helena and Elena, that'd be pretty good. Discard this Castle Vantress, I guess. And we have a Doomblade at the ready, I guess. Which is probably incredibly important in this matchup, because we're going to get beat down real hard. The next creature they play is going to get 4+1/+1 counters and haste. And now all their creatures with counters have trample too. Yeah, probably it was a good idea to grab a Doomblade here. Alright, so now they're putting 5 counters on the Dusk Shell Crawler, giving it haste and trample. We're going to take 10 damage here. because it's all trample, so the only thing Ornithopter can do for us is stop 2 damage total, which does not feel worth it. When we could sacrifice that Ornithopter to a trash for treasure later. Okay, it goes to our turn. Definite Doomblade on Helena and Elena if they don't have a hexproof spell up here, which it's very possible they do. Yep, sure do. Snakeskin Veil it is. Can't stop that. Play our Goblin Engineer to slam Paradox Engine into our grave and then pick it up with Trash for Treasure. Yeah, Goblin Engineer with Trash for Treasure in hand is pretty spicy. We could grab a Metalwork Colossus, I guess. The Immortal Sun's decent too. I think we grab Paradox Engine because we have 3 mana worth of Mana Rocks on the board. And then if we can survive another turn, we could potentially pop off. It's going to be hard to survive another turn, though. But we don't have many artifacts that just help us survive a turn. Metalwork Colossus would be the main one. Just play Metalwork Colossus, hope they can't kill it. Yeah. I feel like I'm supposed to just do that. Because if I Trash for Treasured for a Paradox Engine, I wouldn't have the mana to cast any spells afterward anyway, so I'm just like waiting a turn and hoping they don't kill me with no way to stop them from doing it. This way we have a 10/10 to maybe stop them from killing us. Now they attack with just Dusk Shell Crawler unless they have removal, because Helena and Elena won't be big enough. So they have to put a bunch of counters onto just that crawler. And then that'll be like 11 power so it can get past the Metalwork Colossus. Alright, Ranger class, cool. So we do survive another turn this way. Yeah, otherwise they'd be attacking with 16 with Trample. 17 with Trample because Ranger class 2. 17 power with Trample, we would only have a 3/3, a 1/2, and an 0/2. We'd only be able to block with 4 to keep Jhoira out. So we block with 4. So 17 minus 4. We could be at 2 life had we picked up Paradox Engine. And then I guess with a Paradox Engine on board, we might be more likely to survive another turn. Actually, no, I'm not accounting for the Nylea that's active now. So yeah, no. I think we wouldn't have a way to survive without losing Jhoira if we didn't pick up Metalwork Colossus. Because if we didn't pick up Metalwork Colossus, they'd have no reason not to attack with this 5/8 as well. So we block there and take 12, go to 3, I think. And just hope to pop off next turn. I think so. We get to play an Ugin and destroy their Dusk Shell Crawler, which is helpful. And we'll have 3 blockers out. There's a mild chance just playing an Ugin would be enough. There's an Aetherflux Reservoir now. We don't have the mana to do that and Ugin. That would require 10 mana. We have 6, 7, 8, 9. We're 1 mana off from Reservoir plus Ugin. I guess we can Ugin first and then Reservoir, but that's awkward because then we don't get any life from the Reservoir anyway.
I know more than you could learn in 1,000 lifetimes.
And 1 mana Chromatic Lantern. We gain some life off that with Aetherflux Reservoir. Yeah, that's pretty nice. We can sack something now to bring an Ornithopter back if we want. Got nothing good to do that with, though. Just get rid of the big old Dusk Shell Crawler here.
Be gone, interloper.
And now, I guess at instant speed, if they use removal to try to kill our Metalwork Colossus, we sacrifice it at instant speed and make sure we have at least an Ornithopter to block with. We might be getting back in this here. Aetherflux Reservoir was huge. Because now every next turn that we survive is just going to be that much more life to give us more breathing room as we sit behind the Metalwork Colossus. Yeah, and they're just going to scoop them up there, which is fair enough. Most of our deck is going to draw us a card when we cast it if they can't kill Jhoira. Like, we just cast Beergy now and draw a card, gain some life, play a Vizier, gain 2 life when we do that. Now we get a 2/2 as well. Sitting behind this 10/10 actually ended up playing really, really well for us. That'll be another victory for the Jhoira deck. Ooh, I am so excited to see what our opponent's playing here. It's one of the new Kamigawa Neon Dynasty commanders focused around auras. This is an exceptional hand, we'll go ahead and keep it. This is Light Paws Emperor's Voice. Whenever they cast an aura, they can search their library for an aura with mana value less than or equal to that aura, and put that onto the battlefield attached to Light Paws. It does have to be a different name from any other aura they have, but this is a singleton format, so they'll all be differently named. So this should be a really cool deck. I expect them to have a good chunk of removal, actually, because they get to run all of the pacifism-style removal spells. And then every time they cast a pacifism on one of their creatures, one of our creatures, I should say, they get to slap an aura onto one of their creatures, specifically Light Paws. Well, I can't attack into a first striker, so Beaumont Courier has been shut down by the Battlefield Raptor. Nice little bird to slap some auras onto. I expect most of the auras are going to end up on Light Paws, but Light Paws triggers anytime an aura enters the battlefield under their control, regardless of where they put it. Then Light Paws puts the second aura, the one that they tutor out of their deck, onto Light Paws themselves. So their plan is probably, if they have auras that buff something in their hand, they're going to buff a different creature and then use the tutor to buff Light Paws. That way they're spreading their threats around, not making one just absolutely massive threat. Unless they just get to immediately tutor up an aura that says, like, hexproof or something. But I'm not actually entirely sure about all of the different auras that are available on Arena. I don't know if that is a thing or not. So it's possible and actually probable I was supposed to hold Manifold Key in hand because it doesn't really do anything on this board state, whereas it's a cheap spell for Jhoira. So just a cheap way to draw another card. But I definitely should have played Chromatic Lantern, definitely should have played Beaumont Courier, because that gets the Beaumont Courier set up with cards to refuel our hand later. And, of course, the Lantern makes sure we can cast our spells a little early. But, yeah, Manifold Key. Probably should have just kept it in hand to draw more cards off Jhoira. Obviously, Beaumont Courier didn't work out well because they had just a 1/2 turn one. But you never know. So here comes Moonblessed Cleric, grabbing them any enchantment to put on top of their library. They choose Commanding Presence, which is going to be very good on their flyer. Makes it so when that flyer deals combat damage to us, they get a 1/1 token out of it. We have 5 mana here. We can't cast Ugin even if we play a land first, so yeah. Sure it is. And we pass the turn. But this is going to be a huge turn for them. They make the Battlefield Raptor bigger, then they can tutor their library for any aura that costs 3 or less and put it onto Light Paws. I guess that's only if they play a land here. They haven't played a land yet, so they might not have one. Never mind. Here it comes. Commanding Presence onto Battlefield Raptor. Any 3 mana aura they have onto Light Paws. Or they're considering an Arrest style effect on Jhoira. But it would have to be an aura that can shut off her static ability for it to be important here. Alright, so Commanding Presence actually going to go on to Moonblessed Cleric. Pretty smart move. That's going to let them attack with all 3 of their creatures pretty well, because Light Paws is about to get buffed. Battlefield Raptor already gets in freely because it's in the sky, so this way the Cleric gets to attack as well. So Cathar's Call is what they choose to put on Light Paws. So actually not going to help Light Paws attack in here, but it is going to give them a 1/1 every single turn, which is big. They've got multiple ways to do that now. Yeah, I believe we are taking all of this damage down to 15. Alright. There's a key to the archive, which is nice. We untap it with Manifold Key. Love that. If we play Ugin, we can't cast anything else here, but we could blow up the Cleric, but we don't need to. We can survive another hit, most likely, I guess. Doubling up on auras could be quite scary. But I'm gonna get ballsy. Let's see what we hit here. Antiquities War, well that does nothing. What does the key pull out at least? D-Spark, Lightning Helix, Lightning Bolt. D-Spark doesn't work on anything. Lightning Bolt and Lightning Helix only work on Light Paws. But Lightning Helix gains us some life, so it could be worth it. Antiquities War, probably too much mana to toy around with right now. We're going to untap Key to the Archive. Now we have 3 mana total, so we could play Metalwork Colossus or Lightning Helix. Feel like it's got to be Lightning Helix, in which case I didn't need to untap my Key to the Archive. Alright, yeah, next turn we can play Ugin and Metalwork Colossus, because Ugin makes the Metalwork Colossus cheap enough to cast. Well, it makes Metalwork Colossus cost 1, because technically Ugin is not an artifact, so it doesn't reduce the cost by X, like all of our other non-creature artifacts do, but still. Alright, Light Paws comes back, they spend all of their mana into that. Probably gonna go ahead and chump block with Beaumont Courier this turn. It's not doing much on the board for me. Alright. Ooh, Goblin Engineer. Any 3 mana or less artifact for the future if we want it. I think I'm just gonna play Ugin though. Draw a card. There's Trash for Treasure, the Trash for Treasure Goblin Engineer combo back at it again. Because of Key to the Archive and Manifold Key, we have 3 mana total instead of 2. So we can play Engineer and Metalwork Colossus, which I think is what we do. We grab whatever we want to pick up next turn. So I guess we Colossus first because it draws us a card that might change what we want to do. Does not, it's just a land. Although we could Trash for Treasure immediately, but no reason. Play the Goblin Engineer. Grab whatever artifact we would like. I think a Paradox Engine here. Actually, because now we're going to be sitting behind some 2/2s off the Ugin to chump block with. And we have multiple mana rocks for a Paradox Engine to go off with. We just need to hit historic spells. Because if we hit Aetherflux Reservoir, then I don't know, I feel like it's just less likely to go off going for Aetherflux Reservoir than Paradox Engine. Although it does give us a little more breathing room. So when we have Goblin Engineer out too, where we can sack an artifact to return an artifact, this keeps untapping with the Paradox Engine down. It only returns the cheap ones though, like Beaumont Courier. Trash for Treasure returns any of them. So if this were a Goblin Welder, I'd be living the dream. Alright, Ugin's probably dying here, but at least it looks like we're probably not gonna die. Pretty big Light Paws, lots of auras around the board. Yep, double attack on Ugin. Ugin is a goner. Attack us for 5, let's draw a card off our 2/2. Draw this land for turn. Okay, goodbye Ugin. Ooh, Filigree Attendant is excellent. Okay, so what do we want to do? Trash for Treasure. For sure. We want to tap everything because we're gonna Paradox Engine. Do we want to use Goblin Engineer 2 is the question. We just get a Beaumont Courier? I don't think we do. So now we want to cast Filigree Attendant. Untap our stuff and draw a card. Vidalcan Archmage, untap our stuff, draw a card. Okay, we gotta play fast, because Arena does not like these kind of decks. We actually don't draw a card off that one, unfortunately. Does this go to hand or battlefield? It goes to battlefield, so we don't draw a card. How do we draw a card? How do we draw a card? We have to recast Metalwork Colossus somehow. That would require us to sack 2 artifacts. We don't have 2 artifacts to sacrifice unless we activate Blinkmoth Nexus, I suppose. We can sacrifice Blinkmoth Nexus and the key. Be a little weird to do. But I suppose we can. Sack Filigree Attendant instead to make sure we have Metalwork Colossus mana. So we keep going off. I'm going to sack the key. And just hope we have enough for Metalwork Colossus. I'm not sure. We do. Okay, cool. Now we draw 2 cards every time because we have Archmage plus Jhoira, which means we're definitely popping off. We've got Mind's Desire coming up, and that's our only option because we didn't hit another artifact, so Mind's Desire it is. I need to go ahead and tap key to the archive. Oh, too late. Too late, Arena's mad. We hit Ornithopter, perfect. Actually, everything's free, so it doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, they're done. They are done watching me figure out how to go off, and it is going to go off at that point with a Mind's Desire off. We hit 2 artifacts already. So we just go tap for a bunch of mana, bam, draw, draw. Tap for a bunch of mana, bam, draw, draw. And each time we're casting them for free, too. So that's, like, we're already right there. This is 6 mana, draw 4 cards. So we're adding 6 to our mana pool and drawing 4 cards. If any of those are artifacts, we're drawing even more. We have 3 more triggers of Mind's Desire. Highly, highly likely that if we don't win the game that turn, we just get an absolutely insurmountable board state at the very least. Almost impossible not to, thanks to the Mind's Desire draw. Some classic Storm stuff there, the Mind's Desire. Playing against another one of the brand new Kamigawa Neon Dynasty commanders. This time it's going to be Ishin, 2 Heavens is 1, a Samurai tribal commander that doubles up any abilities that trigger when creatures are attacking. Definitely going to keep this hand. It is a little awkward not to have any artifacts in it, but I really, really love Replication Specialist and Renowned Weaponsmith, so if we draw any artifacts, the hand's going to pop off. There's one. I don't know if that is exactly what I was thinking of, but I guess if we start getting some non-creature artifacts out, we could make 2 Metalwork Colossi, thanks to Replication Specialist. Alright, this is going to be a really aggressive deck from our opponent. We see an Alpine Houndmaster here. Go ahead and get a Filigree Attendant down. Jhoira coming out next turn. This creature gets +X+O, where X is the number of attacking creatures. It's going to get that twice, as long as Ishin is on the board. Kind of an awkward hand. Wouldn't be surprised if we just get beaten down by Ishin. Rotag Bugcatcher gets +X+O every time it attacks, so it'll double up on that when they have Ishin out as well. Ooh, Aetherflux Reservoir, sweet. I'm going to wait to do that until I have Jhoira out, though. So we draw some more cards. 1 damage with Filigree Attendant. Get in there. How much we're going to take here if they just play Ishin? Probably a lot, but I would expect Jhoira to just die. Yep. And that is how it will be. Like, the general game plan is we just slam down Jhoira, and if Jhoira doesn't get removed, then we're gonna do our ridiculous synergy ways to end the game. But if Jhoira gets removed, we kind of just turn into kind of your regular blue-red artifact combo deck. Now we're focusing on, like, Replication Specialist kind of synergies and combos to try to go off. Just focus on our other stuff, be a singleton artifact commander deck for a little while. Other great combos coming up. We have the mana to play Aetherflux Reservoir and combo at next turn, which is going to be awesome. Thundering Raiju. Oh yeah, doubling up that ability is really scary. putting +1/+1 counters on stuff. Ooh, so Guardian Idol enters tapped, but it is going to be great to get 2 copies of them. I think I'd rather play the Aetherflux Reservoirs first. And yes, I meant Reservoirs plural. There's one. There's another. And we are attacking in the sky pretty well, but they're going to attack back for like 1,000,000 here, but we're not going to have good blocks, so if Ishin makes it a lethal attack, then go for it. Ishin's got it, because if Ishin doesn't make a lethal attack next turn, we're going to gain a lot of life with 2 copies of Aetherflux Reservoir. We can really try to race with that. Alright, here we go. Let's figure it out. I haven't done the math, and I'm not sure if our opponent has either, but we'll figure it all out here. Arena will figure it out for us. How much damage is this? Put your guesses in the comments below, although you could just wait and figure out and then comment, so that would be not fair. I'm guessing a lot. I'm guessing it's like 15 or something. We'll see. 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'm not gonna do... Okay, 25. Now we're down to 7. So it was more than 15. It was 18. All right. Yeah, that was big. Aetherflux Reservoir, I believe in you. Let's go ahead and Guardian Idol. But I don't want to make a copy because I want to have the mana up to Reality Heist here. Because I want to cast more spells is what I want to do. So gain a life because of that. Metalwork Colossus only costs 1 now. I'm going to decline to pay for that. Reality Heist costs 3, so I'm going to do the 3, I think. I should have done Weaponsmith for Guardian Idol. That was really stupid of me. Yeah, I might need the colored mana, so I might just Weaponsmith now. Yeah, that was super, super dumb of me. Because now if I draw free artifacts off Reality Heist, then I'll be sad that I chose to tap Weaponsmith right there. I don't think I want to copy because I want a Reality Heist here. Okay, what do we have? Gain more life. These are not free. We are going to have 2 mana up. Do any of these cost 2? Quarter Monitor does. So Quarter Monitor, Paradox Engine are the choices, I think. And we do Quarter Monitor to gain a bunch more life. And hope that it's enough to take another hit. Yeah, we're at 27. That could very well be enough. Artifact or creature. Untap the Guardian Idol, correct? Yes, I think. They have to kill us in 1 swing to win if I attack with these 2. Because then we just attack again next turn. Yeah, let's go for it. Can they kill us in 1 swing? We're at 27. Do your thing, Ishin. We have a 10/10 to block with here too, so we get to block the biggest creature. Blood Vial Purveyor. That's big. And that blocks a flyer, so they're not dead next turn anymore. They can go for a non-lethal swing. Alright. See how much this is. Probably another good chunk here. But they don't attack with Ishin because they want that to stay on the board, and our Metalwork Colossus is big enough to kill it. So at least we're not doing we're not taking that bit of damage. All right, yeah, this is not that bad at all. We take 9, yeah, and don't lose a creature in the process. I think we've got this. I think Jhoira's just doing Jhoira things again. Although we only have 1 spell to cast here, so we do have to survive another attack after this, I think. Because we attack all, they do what? They block that there, they block this there, they take 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we need to be able to survive another attack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. 6 for this, only 5 for this. They're just going to scoop them up. I was trying to do the math there. I don't think we actually... Like, we definitely don't kill them, right? We could make 2 Paradox Engines, but then we're not casting anything, so it doesn't matter. Maybe I should put like a one of Heart Piercer Bow or Vial of Dragonfire, so in a position like this, where I really want to trigger Aetherflux Reservoir and Paradox Engine and stuff, I can start pulling those out to cast more spells in one turn. They're really bad cards. Like, I would never want to draw them if I didn't have Renowned Weaponsmith on the board, but that little added bit of flexibility could be interesting in a spot like this, where it's like, okay, I'm going to just cast one spell and gain 1 life now. And then, you know, I guess I just attack with Filigree Attendant and it trades with Blood Vial Purveyor, and then, you know, I just hold a good blockage for their stuff and they can't really attack yet, and we slowly try to kill them with Specialist now. Maybe instead of that, we could go off with Weaponsmith and Paradox Engine, because then we get a ton of mana, because we're casting like 1 mana spells there. We don't get a ton of mana. We only have 1 mana rock here, so even if we had double Paradox Engine, we wouldn't get that much mana. I don't know. We could still do the Weaponsmith thing to cast 2 spells this turn at least and gain more life. Probably not worth it. I don't know. That was actually a really interesting game. I think we're really close to dying and just getting outpaced there, but get there in the end with some just ridiculous artifact cards. As usual, the Metalwork Colossus in these games today has been an absolute blessing. Really just helping us just put a 10-10 down to block stuff. Looks like we're against a 5-color deck here. Jegantha the Wellspring. For 5 mana, they get a 5/5 that taps for 1 mana of every single color. Probably should have just Fable Passage first. Well, now I have 4 lands, so I can just Fable Passage turn 4, and then every turn I have an untapped land, so I guess it worked out. Alright, 4 mana turn 3, Jhoira. See if we're playing an absurd game here where Jhoira doesn't immediately get killed, which means that we just immediately go off. Ooh, Deafening Silence. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-creature spell each turn. It's a good thing we've got a lot of creatures to try to combo off with. But for now, because I can only cast 1 spell this turn anyway, I may as well cast my most expensive spell. Ooh. I take Chromatic Lantern. Mindstone's cheaper, but again, we're going to be casting 1 non-creature spell a turn, so it doesn't really matter how cheap it's going to be. So next turn I'm interested in playing Arcbound Tracker and then playing a second spell so it gets a counter on it. Although Immortal Sun's a pretty great pickup. What do we have here? Filigree Attendant is also great. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 mana. So we could play Chromatic Lantern into Filigree Attendant, which I think is just going to be better. It's just going to be more damage than the Arcbound Tracker would be. And we're definitely gonna have to go for a just beat 'em up kind of game here if we can only cast 1 non-creature per turn. But we've got plenty of creatures to do that with. They have 4 cards in their hand. They have the mana to cast their commander if they want to get it out there. Unless I draw like my Ugin, I'm not going to do anything about it. Very uninteractive deck over here. Let's check out this Filigree Attendant's artwork. It's pretty cute. I wonder what plane... Oh, it's from Esper. Nice. Nice. I love all the Esper artifacts, the Filigree stuff. I should have known the second it said Filigree. Sanctum of All. So it's going to be a 5-color shrine deck using a lot of the new shrines from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Got a nice big attack this turn. Make it even bigger with the Immortal Sun. Probably not the right play, but it's still kind of funny, so we'll do it. Rawr! this, like 18 damage? Not quite, because they block one of the 6/6s, not the 4/4. Still a ton of damage just beating our opponent down. The funny thing there is we would have had the mana for Metalwork Colossus if the Antiquities War didn't make all of our stuff creatures there. So it's kind of funny the Nombo there, so we couldn't cast Metalwork Colossus that turn. Alright, here's Giganta. But we've got more than enough cards in hand to just not cast Jhoira here and just go free Metalwork Colossus. Mind's Desire only costs us 5. We have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8, so we have enough mana to play a 3-mana non-creature. We could also play a 1-mana creature, 2-mana creature. I did this in the wrong order. Just to not be embarrassed, let's play a different creature. And then we still have Mind's Desire mana exactly, so now we can Mind's Desire. I guess we have to hit creatures off of this, or we can't cast them, but we could hit creatures. Yeah, Birgi, there we go. Foundry Inspector, there we go. Gild the Lotus is not going to get cast. Alright, cool. Pretty cool. The extra mana from the God of Storytelling and make our stuff even cheaper, so we get to play an Arcbound Tracker here. Although, again, that would be embarrassing, so let's play Breya's Apprentice instead, but I guess we're playing that too. Alright, let's just... yeah, we'll play Arcbound Tracker when it would have had like 10 counters on it if we just played it first, but I played it the funny, super incorrect way on purpose, I promise. Alright. Bantu's Last Reckoning destroys all creatures, but makes it so they can't untap their lands next turn. So if we get to just re-flood the board with enough creatures to kill them, there is no way for them to come back. So that is the concession from our opponent, and I think that is going to end today's video. That was about an hour long, the deck tech plus the gameplay as a whole, which is about how much Historic Brawl I tend to like to play. I hope you all enjoyed that deck, or at least... I don't know, at least found it interesting. I know it's definitely not everybody's cup of tea. A lot of people really don't like playing against that kind of deck. But I don't know, I just really enjoy artifacts and artifact combo stuff. My first commander deck that I built myself was an Arkham Dagson deck back in, 2010 maybe? Because I started in 2009. And Arkham Dagson was a 4-mana 2/2 that you could tap and sacrifice an artifact creature to search your library for any non-creature artifact. Yes, I mean any non-creature artifact, and put it into play. So you could sacrifice an Ornithopter, 0/2 Ornithopter, and then pull out a 9-mana Darksteel Forge that makes all of your artifacts indestructible. There were a lot of combos you could do with Arkham Dagson. That were super good. So that was my first commander, my first love. I just love artifact stuff. I love going off with these stupid Rube Goldberg machines, and we can do a very similar thing with Jhoira on Arena. Anyways, that is going to end today's video. As always, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see some more Magic Arena, then you can just stick around on the channel for more. You can also like, comment, and subscribe if you want to let the YouTube algorithm know to send you more of these videos in your notification feeds. You can catch me live on occasion, usually playing Limited, trying to hit Mythic at the Twitch channel in the link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you all once again for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.